Now let me take this opportunity to invite Professor Vidya Deshpande. She has been a very, very senior journalist and now a media educator of considerable repute. Professor Deshpande, I hand over the mic to you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Das. I wanted to, today I'm going to be talking about solutions journalism and how reporting can go beyond just the news report that you see in a paper. Although, unfortunately, most of the time, I think our reporters don't have that time and luxury compared to foreign newspapers where you get a lot of time to work on one story. Here, people are working on they have too much on their plate. So let me just quickly take you through my presentation, and let's just quickly see what is solutions journalism and what uh, is being done about it, right? So what is solutions journalism? Basically, when you talk about traditional news, you talk about the 5 W's and the H. But in solutions journalism, you talk about the what, you talk about the how, you offer an insight, you talk about the limitations, and then you also talk about the evidence of impact. So let me give you some examples to tell you what I mean by this. When you're talking about solutions journalism is when you give the whole picture. Okay, so it is, the definition of course is to give the insights, working, not working, or partially working. The key is to look at the problem and the response. Most of the times, as reporters, we just stop with the problem. We're not able to go beyond this. One of the biggest examples during Corona has been the issue of migrant population. So if you take a look at the migrant population, what has happened? Till such time the lockdown happened and those information that was sent out by the government probably did not reach the people who are at the migrant level, and they started leaving after 2 days en masse. Yeah, many of them started walking, etc. So what happened was you suddenly had this shock of thousands of people walking back to their houses or trying to walk back to their houses and creating a problem of too many people crowding in the bus stands, etc. And finally, the government had to step in and supply buses, etc. Of course, we've read many stories about people trying to walk back home, and some of them, I think there was a story in yesterday's paper saying how one of them died, etc. So the thing about solutions journalism is how we could have done this differently, or how somebody can still do it, is to look at the migrant population. For example, if the government, if we look at the way some other country does it, and if we had a register of all migrant laborers who are in a city, and if you knew exactly where they came from and where they had to get back to, we may not have faced this issue of suddenly people reaching the bus stand and not finding a way to get home, because nobody really knew how many migrant workers we had and from which parts of the country they came from. So this is a part of solutions journalism where a journalist has to spend more time researching the topic so that you can do stories differently and not, be less divisive and more constructive. So it's not just about feel good. Okay, it's or balancing out the doom and the gloom. That's not solutions journalism. So if you take a look quickly, let's see at the checkpoints. Focus on a problem and respond to it. For example, you had this story about the masks. What happened initially? Everybody was trying to get hold of an N95 mask or a surgical mask. And what happened when people started mass buying these masks? It became an issue. People who actually needed it, like surgeons and healthcare workers, frontline workers, did not get masks. So then we had to come up with a solution where one of the newspapers, of course, has taken a front line on that, where you're saying that use any piece of cotton, anything that you can clean, anything that's soft on your face, and cover your face with that. And in fact, now it has become compulsory in most cities to wear a mask when you go out. So this is something like a solutions journalism story, that when it became a problem of getting hold of masks, then you got into this story that how people can devise other ways of using masks. The other thing, of course, is the Bhilwara experiment or the Agra experiment or the Kerala story, where you talk about the how-tos of the problem. What happened in Bhilwara, it was a very successful effort of curbing that situation where Bhilwara became a hotspot and there were so many people who had got infected with COVID. And how the local government there kind of worked together from the senior to the junior levels and how they stopped it. That is something that we could look at and emulate in other parts of the country wherever we have hotspots now. In fact, I think a lot of the governments are now doing that. They are emulating Bhilwara model, Agra model, and the Kerala model. Okay. The other thing you can look at is focus on effectiveness. For example, when you look at what happened in South Korea, how was South Korea so effective? They came up with this testing system which was very quick. And what did they do? They had this drive-in booths where people who thought they had corona could drive in, and you could give your blood and your throat swab for checking. It was as simple as that. And now in India too, we've picked that up, and there are some cities which have started this, including Delhi and Gurgaon, where you have drive-through systems where you can have your self-checked whether you're corona positive. The other thing that you can look at is social distancing, where inspiration and insight, this is something else that you look at to social solutions journalism for. So you do stories where you can look at how other people, how you can inspire others to do stories, but it also should give insights about how it actually works. There's no point in just saying social distancing in the metro. If I go to a metro station and I don't know how social distancing works, then it's not going to help me. So this is another kind of story that comes into solutions journalism. Then again, the other thing is that when we talk about solutions journalism, is that you can't just leave out something that is bad or that hasn't worked. For example, if you take the case of TJ, right? There's been a lot of hue and cry over it, saying that we are targeting people. One of the things about solutions journalism is that while you don't target a particular community or a particular people, you need to talk about what actually happened there and how that should have been curbed right from the beginning, and how maybe police/government inaction at the point when they had those meetings in March should have been stopped, but didn't happen, and how that problem could have been stopped from escalating to this level. So these are the things about solutions journalism that I wanted to talk to you about. I will leave it here. So the thing is not to talk only about the problem, but to also talk about the solution. Another example that I'd like to quickly give you today, for example, there was a story about this lady who wanted camel milk for her baby who was autistic in Mumbai. So what happened? She tweeted, and then a DM saw it, and then they finally kind of got in touch with the railways, and one of the trains dropped off 20 liters of camel milk for her from Rajasthan. So now the thing is that how do you take this story forward? You could take it forward by looking at a way to report on what can be done, so that 20 liters of milk is evidently not enough for that baby to last maybe 4, 5, 6 days. After this, what's going to happen? Because the lockdown is likely to go on for another 2 weeks, right? So if perhaps the government had started a register where you register yourself and list out these problems from the beginning, that I have an autistic child who has these special needs. So people are already aware that this need is there. Okay, so we could discuss this later in the questions also. I will just stop here and hand the mic back to Rahul.